showing noon on the dot, so let's go ahead and kick things off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky. I'm a senior coordinator here at DreamBank, and on behalf of our entire team, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us here. And as we get started, we always like to encourage folks to share where they're tuning in from, if they're comfortable. Go ahead and use the chat section for that as well. Both the chat and Q&A are active today. We'll use chat as general discourse, just regular comments, and then if you have any specific questions for James, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. For those of you who maybe attended our virtual or in-person events in the past, welcome back. And for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time, we'd love to take a few moments and introduce you to DreamBank. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dream. And that's why DreamBank was created. It's an inspirational community destination and virtual experience that is dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, to overcome obstacles, and to stay motivated. I'm really excited to feature our featured speaker today here, introduce our featured speaker today, James Roloff. But before I go ahead and do so, a couple additional housekeeping items. I covered one of them. Chat is going to be general discourse today. Go ahead and populate any general questions you have in there for myself, or if you want to engage with your fellow participants, if you have any specific content-related questions, go ahead and populate them into the Q&A section, and we'll make sure we get to those at the end. Again, regarding any sort of tech issues or more questions pertaining to the Zoom room itself, go ahead and ping me within the chat section there. So again, my name is Andy with the DreamBank team. And we'll do my best to make sure that we get those situated for you. Many of our events are recorded, and we do share out the recordings of the events after the case. So keep an eye out for your inbox, in your inbox for the recording for this, and then I'll also go ahead and share our YouTube page as well, and that's just a great resource of many of our previous recordings as well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce James Roloff, who will be speaking on developing a digital sales funnel today. So without further ado, James, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of DreamBank. I've been doing a lot of stuff over the years down at the DreamBank. It's a cool space that American Family has to offer. So I'm super happy to be here and sharing some knowledge with people today. This is kind of a fundamental topic as far as the things that I talk about working with our clients and presenting on, and it's all about building a digital sales funnel. So the goal here today is by the time we walk away, hopefully you should have a good understanding of what digital sales is. But more importantly, hopefully you'll see the framework that I use, and it'll give you some inspiration and some ways to kind of move forward for you and your business. In the chat too, if you want to let me know, what your role is, what your company is, that kind of stuff. It's always great to kind of understand who the audience is that we're working with here. As far as this presentation goes, it's really designed for small business owners, for people on sales teams and marketing teams, really anybody who's in charge of growing a business today should hopefully be able to benefit from what we're doing. So I'll go ahead and get started then. We're going to talk about today, number one, what is digital sales? We're going to talk about why it's important to implement and be aware of. You've probably heard of digital marketing, but what is digital sales? So we'll talk about that today. We'll talk about the digital sales funnel framework that we use, and then we'll talk about how to get started, and then hopefully have some good amount of time for questions and answers at the end. So if you don't already know me, I am James Roloff. I'm also here in the Madison area, as I see lots of Madison people as well. My background is actually more in the digital marketing world. So if you're familiar with the firm Powder Keg Web Design, that was an agency that I ran the sales side of for 8-9 years. And then we sold that business at the end of 2021. And since then, I've been doing Roloff Consulting, which really focuses on helping B2B businesses sell online. Beyond that, I was one of those nerdy kids that started building websites back in middle school. So I have been building websites and doing digital online things for 20 plus years. So I'm super passionate about leveraging digital strategy to grow business, build a community, build an audience. I also have an MBA with a focus on organizational change. So a lot of the foundational roots of what we're doing here is helping deliver change for our prospects and for our customers. So that's a big part of our strategy as well. All right, so let's jump right in to what is digital sales. The best way I like to think of this is you have the old school version of sales, right? The things where you're analog, you're meeting in person, you're calling people, you're doing more of those manual sales activities. That is how we used to do sales. And we have this picture of this creepy guy looking in the door trying to sell you things. But that's not how people buy anymore. Nowadays, people buy online for a majority of the processes, right? And I'm guessing anybody on this webinar has probably experienced that. When you're looking to buy something, more often than not, and I have some stats to back this up in a second, you probably start online. You do a Google search, you look at reviews, you read about different products, you try to understand the problem you're facing. All of that comes through online content. So that is where the sales process starts today. And that's why it's so important to have the digital sales strategy. And we've seen this across tons of other things, right? This move from analog to digital. Cameras, we have DVDs, which might even be digital, but more of that physical thing to online streaming. We talk about sending letters versus emails. There's still time and place, obviously, for analog things, but the world is moving towards digital, and so your sales process should too. So real quick, the basics of what is digital sales. I don't like to complicate it. It's basically just sales activities that are done through digital channels or leverage technology. Same thing as marketing, right? There's digital marketing and there's kind of that broader term of marketing. There's also print marketing, event marketing, all those different things. So I see digital sales as just the way we conduct our sales today using digital channels and obviously reaping the benefits of that, but also aligning ourselves with the way that people buy. So some examples of traditional sales versus digital sales. Traditional things are like networking events, trade shows, phone calls, print advertising, live events, in-person meetings, brochures and business cards. That's all traditional, analog style sales activity. And there is still a major place for that. I'm not here to say that digital sales is to replace that. It is to augment that and to be another strategy you're using in your tool belt. So things like social media, email, websites, virtual meetings, CRM software, market intelligence, automation, that's all stuff that happens in the digital realm. And I know what you're probably thinking, that some of the stuff sounds like marketing and not sales. And my take on that is that there is a very, very blurry line between sales and marketing nowadays. And marketing, in a lot of ways, is a brand marketing. It's a company trying to reach prospects and penetrate a market, where digital sales and sales, even though it leverages some of the things like social media and content, it is you trying to build up your expertise online and build up your authority so that you can actively reach your prospects that way. So I just want to kind of clarify that the difference between sales and marketing there. It's very blurry, it's very gray nowadays. But anybody who is in charge of growing a business and doing any kind of business development should be leveraging these tools that we might, traditionally consider as digital marketing. Okay, so let's talk about why it's so important to be doing this. Again, I already kind of talked about that at the beginning, that this is the way people buy nowadays. And this was from Forrester research that 92% of B2B purchases start with an online search. Again, this is probably something you've experienced too, that when you have a problem in your business and you're trying to solve it, you don't go running to a trade show to figure out how to solve that, right? You don't go run to a networking event to figure out how to solve that. Or you don't wait for a postcard or a cold call to come to you. You are starting with online search because you are trying to understand the problem you're facing. So that's a huge, huge thing to keep in mind when it comes to exposure and visibility. 62% of B2B buyers finalize a vendor list based solely on content. So we're looking at that. If you don't have online content, what that's saying is that you are missing a majority of opportunities. And that's incredibly important to understand, that you are missing a majority of what's out there and potential deals if you don't have online content. Because the only way to get found online is to actually have content online. People can't find you if there's nothing to find, right? And then more specifically on the sales side of things, 72% of B2B social sellers outperform their peers who do not. So if you are in a sales role and you're looking at a sales team in general, those who leverage digital channels and leverage social selling are going to outperform their peers who are not doing that. So again, clearly a very big advantage to implementing digital sales. Okay, so why implement it? Kind of a summary there. Buyers want digital. This is how people buy nowadays, and this is your opportunity to fully embrace and align yourself with buying in the year 2025. It also provides leverage. We'll talk a lot about that later on here. That you can reach a lot more people a lot more quickly by using digital channels. And then ultimately, you are going to close more deals. The major scoreboard for us in the world of business is revenue. And if you want to increase your revenue the most, digital channels is the way to do that. Buyers have changed the way they buy. You need to change the way you sell. So, how to do that? The framework that we use is called the favorite teacher framework. And it's a very simple funnel that walks you through how you are going to expand your visibility online, build authority, and convert those people into leads and ultimately into revenue. It's a funnel. Again, everyone likes funnels, especially in the world of sales and marketing. And at the very top of it is educate. You're going to create educational content, get visibility that way. And then is connect. And that's where you actually generate the leads by turning your audience into actual prospects. And then consult. We'll talk about this a lot, but at the very end of the funnel, you're not trying to sell to people. You are consulting them. You are being that trusted advisor that is setting them up with the right tool, product, service to solve their problem. So that's what we're going to walk through today is this favorite teacher framework, and we're going to talk how you can use it to build a digital sales strategy. So start very top of funnel and educate. And the goal of education is twofold. Number one, you're just trying to get more reach, right? Anytime you put out a piece of content online, you are getting eyeballs on that, you are getting visibility, and you're getting your business seen. Like we talked about earlier, a big part of people searching out now online today is they go online and look for content. So you have to have content out there. Educational content is the best way. Another really important of educate is that it helps build up trust, builds up authority. If you're putting out good content, if you're recording videos and you're talking about your products and the services and the problems that your prospects are facing, you are going to build up trust and authority, and that's going to help you ultimately win more deals. So the measurement there often is looking at impressions and how much reach you're getting. And why we call it the favorite teacher framework is that so much of the way that we buy nowadays and the way we think about purchases and industries and who we're going to work with is that we look towards expertise. And this is especially true in the B2B world, and that's mostly where we operate. Is that when it comes to differentiation amongst different firms, typically you're looking towards expertise and that trust that they can actually deliver on what they're saying. So when you think about different people, I have some different people here. Right? You have Dave Ramsey, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Marie Kondo, these people who are experts in their field. And if you want to learn about things, you think of those people, right? And you might not be as famous as they are, but when it comes to your industry and your niche and your market, if you are out there putting out educational content, you can become someone who is a trusted figure in that space. And I think the big key here is, there's the word influencer, right? And I sometimes cringe using that word or even personal brand, right? But ultimately, that's kind of what you're going after is that you want to have influence in your industry. So when people want to buy, they think of you. Ultimately, you want to be that favorite teacher. And kind of a backstory of me, my original major back in college was actually in education and specifically in biology education. I had a teacher in high school a biology teacher, and he was excellent. He made the content so engaging. He brought in things outside of class, outside of the textbook. He would bring in his own little experiments and show us things. Again, we live in Wisconsin, so he'd bring in random things he would find when hiking and talking about them, and he made it super, super engaging. He was a favorite teacher of mine during high school, and he inspired me so much that I actually wanted to be a biology teacher as I went to college. And he's the kind of person that I remember. And that's what I want you to think about when it comes to your strategy. How can you be that favorite teacher for your audience? When people think of you, of your industry, and what you're doing, you want them to think of you. And not because you're putting out, viral content and doing all these different things, but because you are the one who's out there and making the learning about your product or your service or the problems you're facing, you are making it fun and engaging. And your passion for what you're doing should be showing through in the actual way that you're teaching people too. So to kind of break it down when it comes to your sales strategy, let's talk about what that is, right? How do you become that favorite teacher? And I have 3 simple steps in this educate phase. Number one is to define your buyers. I say have students there, cross it out. So if you are a teacher, who are your students? And the best way to do this is to think about your current customers, your best customers, and who are they? What is the problem that they are facing that you are solving for them? What is the process that they go through when they're buying? What questions are they asking? I think more importantly, why are they buying your product or service? What is the underlying transformation that they're trying to take? So I always start there is to understand who your buyers are. And the best way to do that is to create personas. And then after that, you have to create educational content for those people. You have to teach them through educational content that you produce. And then finally, you have to actually publish it and stay consistent. This is probably the hardest part with digital strategy, right? Is to actually every single day go out, put out content, do social posts, do blog posts, do webinars, do these things that educate people. But again, we'll talk about towards the end. If you stick with it, if you are consistent with it, you will reap the rewards when it comes to the actual sales you're generating. So let's start with the first part, which is defining your buyer. Again, the best way to do this in my mind is to create a buyer persona. So actually create a person. Don't just say that I go for people who are businesses size 1 million to 10 million revenue and they're located in the Midwest. That's not going to help you write content. You want to actually think about a specific person. So the easy kind of like low-hanging fruit way of doing this is just to think of your best client and think of the contact at that best client. But again, you can also create a fictitious person called a buyer persona that does this too. But again, thinking about who they are, why they buy, what they buy, how they buy. You're also going to do more things like who are they as a person, so their name, age, location, industry, their family, lifestyle. And I see a lot of marketing people have fun with this, right? But actually giving the person a name and they have a specific age, they're 47 years old, they're not age 30 to 50. So that when you're writing content and when you're actually doing and implementing the strategy, you can create it for that person. Then you have the more standard, customer profile things, industry, company size, revenue, budget. That is important to know because it's going to help you narrow down your prospecting list, but it's also a little bit less important for the kind of content you're going to be creating. But I think most importantly is the why do they buy from you? So what is the problem that this person is facing? If you are simply selling products or services, you're not going to succeed. What you have to be selling is a solution to a problem. So think about what that problem is, think about how it impacts them, and then how your solution fits into it and how that helps them achieve that desired outcome they're after. So those are all things I want you to think about when it comes to building out your persona. So again, personify your ideal customer is step one. Step two is to create educational content. And there's tons of different ways you can create content. I think the big key here is to educate people. Do not sell here. A good digital sales strategy is foundational is to create educational content. So when people can search up their problems, you have the answer. And if you have the answer, you are the person they're going to trust in the process. So when it comes for ideas of creating content, some again simple low-hanging fruit here. What are the top 5 questions that your customers ask you when you are in a discovery situation or a prospect meeting? What are the most common questions you're getting? Any one of those can be turned into a content piece. What are the top 5 questions your customers should be asking you? So thinking of yourself more as an advisor in the buying process, what are those things that people should be asking you and should learn about if they're buying your type of product or service? Again, turn that into a blog post, turn that into a video and post it. Those are all great things. And then, for you personally, what are the things that you're most passionate about in your industry? That's all great stuff to talk about because that's the kind of stuff that shows through as passion and expertise and trust when it comes to your prospect seeing it. So again, thinking back to my biology teacher, his passion for things, even though it might not have been questions that students would have asked, or even though it might not have been things that would have been typically came up in a biology classroom, because he was super passionate about certain things and brought that into the classroom, that came through and it got the audience, or in that case, the students engaged. That's another good way too. And then finally, the content matrix. This is a nice little tool that I use with our clients that just talks about different ways that you can create content ideas. So what we have is we have across the columns, we have personas, and then down the rows, we have the actual buying stages. So you kind of think about that. For your persona at problem awareness stage, what type of content helps them understand the problem? And then solution research, what type of content helps them understand the different solutions available? And then for decision making, when they're looking at you versus other firms, what's going to help them make a decision? And then even post purchase, what's going to help them be successful at the very end of it too. So that's how I like to think of that. And here's an example of one I have. It's probably too small to read, but I have Jeff, the homeowner, and he's going to be buying a solar panel, a residential solar panel. So blog posts for problem awareness might be how to reduce my electricity bill, ways to be more environmentally friendly. So those are kind of the problems, right? If you have a problem, if I want to be more environmentally friendly, that's when you can talk about that at the top of the funnel. Whereas solution research, you might talk about how solar panels work. And then decision making, you might talk about your company, your team, your process, those things that help build up comfort. So you can kind of see as you move down the funnel, there's different types of content that you can do too. I'm gonna pause here for a second because I see we have a question. Does a favorite teacher framework work just as well for B2C businesses? I think it does. And you see a lot of B2C businesses where they do educational content as well too. My background and the people I work with are typically B2B, so that's why my focus is there. But I really do believe that this whole philosophy works really well in the B2C space too. Okay, so what is the goal of building out that content matrix? It's really to deliver the right content to the right buyer at the right time. So if you, again, put yourself in that teacher position, you want to create content that engages your audience. You have to know who your students are, and you need to deliver that content based on the kind of content that they need to be successful. Hopefully that makes sense for everyone. Okay, now step 3, publish and stay consistent. This is the hard part, right? This is the part that actually takes the most work. And I want to remind you that the only way that you can be found is if you create content. If you don't create content, no one's going to see you. So this is probably the most well, I would say it's the most important part, educate phase. I would say knowing who your customers are and the problems they're facing is probably the most important part. But this is the second most important part, which is actually executing. And I have this little stat here, or this, I should say, kind of rule called the 1% rule. And this was something that was found across tons of different websites, message boards, social media websites. It's been recreated multiple times. And that is if you look at all of the users on a website, let's just take LinkedIn, for instance. Of that group, about 90% of people will only lurk. They will go on there, they will scroll down the feed, and that will be it. So that's 90% of people will do just lurk. About 10%-ish, 8, 9, 10% will comment, will engage, will very, very, very rarely create a content or create a post. So that's what we call kind of the contributors in this study. And then finally, 1% of people will post on a regular basis. And I think the particular stat on LinkedIn, I think it's 1% of people post once a week. So when I look at this, when I see that, my thought is the bar is very low. If you are able to post once or twice a week, you are going to be in the top 1% of users. And again, this is LinkedIn, this is Instagram, this is YouTube. If you are consistently posting, you'll be in the top 1%. So just imagine what being in the top 1% would do to your online visibility for you and your business and in your market. So some things that I kind of look at when it comes to consistency or kind of some guidelines that I have is that every single day you should be on social networks, posting, commenting, adding connections. That's kind of that daily social visibility. On a weekly basis, I would try and do some sort of longer form piece. So a blog post, an article, a newsletter, something where you're providing a little bit more depth and a little bit more value. And then on a monthly basis, I'd be thinking about what you can do from like a much more engaging long form piece. So something like in-person events or webinars, LinkedIn Lives. Those are all things you can do on a more, higher level basis. And we'll talk about it later, but it also pulls people in as a lead magnet too, because you are having something they can register for and something you can send out to people too. And a quick graphic here, just this is really fancy. As you might imagine, it looks like some sort of ancient Greek building here. But it comes to getting sales, it comes to getting leads, educational content drives everything. So you create the content, and then you can cross-post content too. You can put it on social. It helps with search, it helps with events, it helps with email. Once you have some sort of kernel of content, you can send it out in a bunch of different ways. And this is how you're ultimately going to drive leads and drive sales for your business. So create the persona. Obviously, that's step number one. Then create the content and then stay consistent with it. That is how you become that favorite teacher. And again, the goal of becoming the favorite teacher is to provide value to your audience and then authentically show up consistently so that when people think of you, they think of trust and they think of someone that can actually deliver on the back end of things. Okay. Oops, wrong button there. All right, so that is the educate section of the funnel. Now we're going to move down to connect. And the goal here is to take that audience and that reach you've gotten and then turn that into actual identifiable leads that you could work in your business. So the goal here is conversions. So the hard part about a digital strategy and creating content is that you post a content, you might say, "Oh, this post got 100 views on it, or 1,000 views on it, or people watch this video 50 times." But that doesn't help you sell, obviously, right? So you want to turn that mystery anonymous viewers into actual leads, and there's two ways you can do that. There's calls to action, direct, and then transitional call to actions. A direct call to action is something like schedule a call, book a meeting, get a quote. The things are basically saying like if you are ready to buy or if you're ready to move into my sales funnel, click this button. And you want that button to make sense based on whatever you're selling and whatever the content is, right? A transitional call to action is something we're not ready to buy yet, but they're ready to date you a little bit more, right? So subscribing to a newsletter is a good example of that, or subscribing to a YouTube channel, or downloading a guide, or attending a webinar. Those are all things that are called transitional call to actions that allow you to kind of keep dating people in the process. So again, direct call to actions, here's an example I have, buy now, right? Very simple process. And then transitional call to actions you can use across your different platforms. Here's an example from LinkedIn where I have download or get a free digital sales guide. This is an older video or older screenshot there. But you have to think about that on your profiles too to make sure that you're correctly listing your different transitional call to actions and that no matter where anybody is viewing your content, they have a very clear next step in the process. So before we move on, just to see a couple questions here. So Dan asked, other than LinkedIn, what's the best social media site for B2B sales leads? We have a lot of success with TikTok. I think YouTube is excellent. So both those are more video dominant. But it also depends on you and your industry. But I think, honestly, for B2B, LinkedIn's great. But B2B buyers are also just people. So a lot of times they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, they're on TikTok, they are anywhere that people like to go online, right? Or obviously, I haven't talked too much about it, but search engines too, and Google, right? And making sure your content's optimized for that. So there's tons of different ways. I think LinkedIn's kind of the easy one because that's where business happens. But I would encourage you to think about what kind of content you'd like to create, and then create the kind of content that's appropriate for that platform. Okay, so good question. So we talked about that you need both. You can't just have buy now. You have to have a transitional call to action as well. And typically what we call transitional call to actions, or another name for them is lead magnets. So you are trying to be a magnet for leads by what you're doing. And you've probably engaged with tons of different lead magnets in the past. But ultimately what the goal of a lead magnet is to go from no trust to low trust to high trust. And I think the best metaphor for lead magnets in my mind is giving them a free sample, right? If you go to Costco and you have those nice people there who are handing out free samples, that's what I want you to kind of think of for your business. How can people get a free sample of working with you? And I would guess, if you're in the B2B space, but maybe it works too, you might not be able to give out a physical product for a free sample, but there's other things that you can do that are potentially the same thing that provide value in return for a lead. So I want you to think about what is the first step in the process of solving your customers' problems? What is a part of the service that you can offer for free? Is there a free trial you can offer? And what is a problem we can help people understand? So sometimes even just helping people diagnose their problem, that alone can be valuable and can be something you can offer up in a lead magnet. But I'll say one of my favorite things to do is what is the first step in the problem? Sorry, if you map out your prospect and their buying journey, what is the first step in the process to get them started to solve their problem? That's one of my favorite types of lead magnets. So here's an example from our last business. Again, we were a web design company. So what we had for a lead magnet was a new website planning guide. This was a great resource. We actually put a lot of time into it, a lot of thought into it. Our design team had input on it, and all these different things. So if you were a VP of marketing and you wanted a new website, and the first step in that process is to plan for a new website, right? Not just to go out and start building a website. There's a lot of thought process around content and design and look and feel, all these different things. So we put together a free guide for that. And we even, kind of positioned it as being that first step in the process. So before you start designing and building, you need to prepare. So who's on the team? What are the goals for your website? What kind of content do you need? So we had put together a downloadable guide that people could use for that. We had that on the website. We have here like a social selling planner. If you are someone who's trying to learn how to do social selling, one of the first steps is to start creating content and understanding how to even get started with that. It helps to have a planner, right? So here's a free planner you can use. Those are all good lead magnets that really importantly, they provide value and they help solve a problem for someone. So something really important to think about there. Tons of different types of lead magnets, guides, checklists, webinars, newsletters, a free sample, a case study, a quiz, podcast, template. There is tons and tons of different things. But the big caveat there I want to say is that you want to make sure that it provides value. The last thing you want to do is have a downloadable guide that's trash, right? Just written by AI. It's not unique to you or your business or the solving the problems that your customer has, because your lead magnet is going to be a reflection of the quality of work that you're going to perform. So you want someone to download one of your lead magnets and think that was so valuable, I can't believe they gave that away for free. That's the goal you want. Because that's the kind of stuff that's going to build trust and build goodwill and make someone want to work with you. So hopefully I made that very clear, because I've seen some trash lead magnets out there. And again, the goal is like, you should be like, man, I'm giving away too much information. And this is something I talk about often with our clients too, because they'll say something like, if I give away my guide or my how-to, then my customer will just do it themselves. They won't need to hire me, right? And yes, there will be some people that follow your guide and they solve the problem on their own and life moves on. But that's not your target audience. Your target audience is the kind of people that are going to hire you to do the work for them. So more often than not, if you have a good lead magnet or a good guide, someone might download it, learn about the process, feel really comfortable with it, and think, that's a great process. I want to hire you to do it for me, right? They're going to outsource that process for you, but your guide was so good and so helpful, they feel a lot more confident in the process moving forward. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody too. Again, the big goal is to turn in your impressions and what you're doing on the front end of things and turn that into identifiable leads. Okay, so that is consult. So far we've built trust through educational content and built reach that way. Now we've captured leads through call to actions that provide value. And now comes the important part, the sales, us actually selling. And this stage of our favorite teacher framework is called consult. And this is where you sell the solution to the person's problem. And the goal here obviously is increase sales. The measurement you're looking for is the amount of revenue that you can get for your business. And when you're at this stage, what you really are is becoming a trusted advisor. You do not want to be a salesperson, because people who are buying through digital means, they're doing their own research. They know a lot of information. Now, maybe they're wrong about some things, but they've done a lot of research typically, right? So at this point, they don't want a salesperson to sell them things. They want an advisor to kind of help them finish out the process. They want that trusted guide. And you've already positioned yourself as that. Now you need to become that person. And I think a really important thing I want to note here too is if you've been doing this right, by the time people are talking to you, if you've been active on social media and you've been putting out content, they've been following you for a couple of weeks or months, A very, very common thing that we'll hear is, I feel like I already know you. That's because they've already built up that trust and they already feel like they know you because they've seen the videos you've done. They've heard the way you talk and the way you position things and your process. And that, if you can hear that phrase, you are gold. That means you're going to win that deal. Assuming the budget and time frame all line up, you'll probably win that deal because that person already has inherent trust in you. And that's probably, one of the that phrase right there is probably one of the most clearest signs to me when working with clients that they have reached a milestone in their digital strategy when they hear that comment uttered during sales meetings. And then again, most importantly here, you've educated them at that stage. They've already learned from you. You provided value through the call to actions. Maybe they've attended some of your webinars, they've read some blog posts, they download a guide from you. At this stage, you are not just selling to them. They're coming to you for guidance. They're saying, this person knows what they're talking about. I'm going to go to them because I trust them and I want them to solve my problem for me. So that is the goal at this stage, is to take off your salesperson hat and put on that trusted advisor hat and be that consultant that solves their problem. So a really good exercise to do at this stage is called the decision matrix. And this is actually based off of the jobs to be done philosophy, if you're familiar with that, JTBD. And a really good book on that is called Demand Side Sales by Bob Mesta. And he has a called push-pull framework, which is very similar to this. But really simple matrix to create. So I have two columns, two rows. Columns are current situation and future situation. Current situation being where your customer is now, and then future situation is where they would be if they bought your product or service. And then down the rows are reasons to buy and then reasons not to buy. And then you can see within there, there's different things. There's kind of a push-pull is what he calls it. But in their current situation, they have frustrations. And that is what's pushing them to go buy. They are sick of their current situation. They're experiencing problems. In the future, for reasons to buy, they have benefits, the things that'll benefit them by implementing your product or your service. But then down under reasons not to buy, there are reasons not to buy with their current situation, right? It is the habits, the systems, the processes, it is the status quo. And oftentimes that one of your biggest competitors oftentimes is the status quo. It's actually not the guy down the street. It is actually just what's already in place at the business or residence that you're selling to. And then in the future situation, if they buy your product or service, there's also some things that are reasons not to buy. And that's anxieties, right? What if they buy your product and service and they can't use it? Or they don't get the ROI they were expecting, or it's too hard, right? All of those things are anxieties. So a really good practice to do is to create this matrix for your business and just start listing things under there, because that'll help you think about how you write proposals. It'll think about how you present proposals, the questions you ask during discovery, because you want to get to the heart of these things so that you have as much pluses on the positive side as possible. So you understand the frustrations, you understand the desired goal they're going after, and you also understand how to overcome that fear of leaving the status quo, or that fear of maybe they buy your product and it doesn't work. So that's a really good exercise to go through. And it also will help come up with some good content ideas too. Once you have that in place, another really important thing is to simplify your buying process. And again, coming from a background in web design, I've seen some really bad buying processes from like a user experience on like a website side of things. But even from a B2B component, a lot of companies do a really poor job of walking people through buying their products or services. They don't lay out the very clear steps of how you're going to go from where they are now to being successful. So it's really important that you think about that for your business. And that's not just the buy now button on your website. I'm talking about like, what's the discovery meeting look like? And then during that meeting, you tell the buyer the next steps they're going to walk through. Do you make it very clear in your proposal what timelines are or what the actual process is? And so a really simple exercise there is just to come up with 3 to 5 step process for your business. So here's an example from our community. This is we have a community where we teach these things and hold people accountable for digital sales. So a really simple 3-step process is join our community, implement new ideas, and grow your sales. This is the kind of stuff that you can put on a website. If you want to get more granular and make it 5 steps, you might like have like join our community, join onboarding sessions, attend a meeting, learn new things, or like, whatever that process might be like. but you're trying to make it kind of getting inside the mind of your buyer and then make it very clear to them, here's step one, two, three, and I'm successful, right? That's a really important part of buying and selling online because if you don't make it clear how someone's going to get to where they are now with their problem to where they're going to be successful and their happy ending, they're going to go and work with a company that does make that clear because clarity is incredibly important. And here's a good example that I found online of like just simple text, right? So this is a company that sells teas, like herbal teas to help you relax. So one example of a header is peaceful or peace of mind in a cup. Clever, nice, whatever. But how about your most restful sleep is just a sip away? I know it sounds silly, but like the most simple things like that will make a person buy the product or the service that is clear on how that buying process works and how you're going to be successful. So I want you to kind of put on the empathy hat of your persona, which is really important why you start with that. Think about who your persona is, and then make it very clear for that person how they're going to be successful. Because the last thing I want to make very clear here is that we don't sell products or services. What we do is we deliver change for our buyers. They are in state A and they want to get to state B. And our product or our service or the way we do business helps people reach that desired end goal. And that is ultimately what we're trying to do. So when you are thinking about how you're selling, it should all be in the frame of mind of how am I helping deliver change for my audience? How am I getting them from where they are now to where they want to be? And it all starts with educational content at the top of the funnel. That is where we're teaching people, we're answering questions, we're helping them understand problems. That's the very top of it, right? Again, in the middle, we are offering help. We are doing that through transitional call to actions, by subscribing to our newsletters, by attending an in-depth webinar, by downloading a helpful guide that we have to offer. We are offering value there. And then finally, during consult, we are becoming that trusted advisor. We are not selling to people. We are helping them solve their problems. That is how this entire process works. And I know I didn't talk too much about like technology today and tips and tricks for, beating the algorithm. Because at the end of the day, if you're creating good educational content and you're leveraging things like lead magnets and email marketing and all these things that go into providing value to people, that stuff all becomes irrelevant. That's all minor stuff in the grand scheme of things. But if you can consistently be that favorite teacher and position yourself online as that favorite teacher, you will build leverage for your business like you couldn't believe. So again, we're looking at different ways to do this. At the very top of the funnel, we're looking at expanding reach. So we're measuring impressions. Middle of the funnel, we're generating leads, we're measuring conversions in our pipeline. And then finally, under consult, we're looking at the sales process and saying, okay, are we increasing our sales and is our revenue going up? So let's talk now quick about how to get started. Step one is assess your current state. Think back to where you are at in your process. Do you have a persona? Are you creating content? Are you consistent with it? Do you have visibility? Do you offer ways to people convert? Are you just saying buy now or get a quote? Or do you have lead magnets that actually solve a problem for someone and give them a sample of the kind of value, high level value that you can offer for them? At the bottom of the funnel, do you have a sales process in place? If someone is learning from you and they're trying to think about purchasing from you, is it very clear the steps they take to go from that initial meeting to a happy ending, nice happy ending? That's all the stuff I want you to think about is kind of take a self-assessment to see where you're at right now and then create a plan. Think about the missing gaps you have in there and start there and just start working through it. My recommendation is to start at the top of the funnel because that to me is the most important part. Any business needs its lifeblood is leads and getting things at the top of the funnel. So I would start there, but just start filling in those missing pieces. And then it never really ends. You are always executing and iterating, based on what's working, you can do more of that. And if you want to grow and you're all of a sudden your social media site's taking off or your social media platform's taking off, you can put more on there. Or maybe you find that as you execute and iterate, something's wrong in your pipeline. And so you have to do more investigation into your sales process, maybe change the wording in your proposals, all these different things. It never really is like a one and done thing. This is a constant execute and iterate process. We do have a quiz on our website. If you want to do a quick self-assessment, very simple stuff. It's just 9 questions you fill out. You answer 9 questions, and then it gives you a star rating between 1 and 5 stars to kind of give you like a baseline of where you're at with your sales strategy. I'll have the link here in a second too. If you want to kind of go through that self-assessment process that way. And then obviously I'm always happy to chat with people too about their particular business. The big thing I want to make here from a comparing traditional sales versus digital sales is that this is an exponential process. If you are doing traditional sales, for every 100 phone calls you make, you might get 1 or 2 appointments, right? So if you want to get 5 appointments, you make 500 phone calls. That's a very linear process where more effort equals more reward on a linear basis. And that can get you started, well off right away. If your goal is to get a lead today, I would start calling people, right? I wouldn't start writing blog posts today to get a lead today. But if you execute a digital strategy over time, and I've seen this consistently across, hundreds of clients, that you get started, start creating content, usually around months 3 and 4, you'll start generating leads. And then more and more people kept saying, I keep seeing you online. I keep seeing your content. That was a super good video. And you'll see it kind of tick up, 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 up. All of a sudden, a year later, you're going to look up and you're going to be generating leads like crazy. And this engine you've created is going to start building upon itself where people keep seeing your content, they keep attending your webinars, they keep downloading guides, and the sales process becomes much more enjoyable because you're not just selling to people, they are buying from you because you are a trusted advisor. They've seen your content, they've bought into what you have to offer, and the next process is simply getting them to sign that contract. So I want to kind of emphasize the point that there is an exponential opportunity for those who are willing to stick it out with a good digital strategy. And the last note, I guess, which kind of goes in that same thing, is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like I just said, you can't go make 5 posts on LinkedIn and expect magic things to happen. But like a good marathon training, over time, you stick with it, you stick consistent, that's where you start getting results. So I'll leave it there and answer any questions you guys have on the chat. I have a link to the quiz there. And I want a quick note too. I have my email there. If anyone has any individual questions about their business, I'm always happy to chat with people too. This is something that I'm super passionate about, and I enjoy learning about businesses and trying to help people as much as possible. So I'm happy to connect that way too. But again, I'll pause and let Andy pop back on as well.
Thanks so much for that, James. Certainly a wealth of information there, and I appreciate you breaking down kind of that process and making it very tangible for folks. We'll give it a couple more minutes here, or a moment, excuse me, for folks to get any questions they may have in for James. I have a question for you, James. So here at DreamBank, we are a community that is built up of fellow fearless dreamers, and we always like to ask our presenters, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who is actively pursuing a dream right now?
Ooh, mine's super simple. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
It is to start taking action. You will not get anywhere in life unless you take action on things. And I think that's probably I am someone, and maybe people on this webinar can relate. I'm someone who loves to plan, and I can plan forever. And planning makes me feel really good. But I've learned that one of the best things you can do is just get started and take action, because that's how you start learning as well.
I love it. I love it. I heard a saying, and I don't know who it was or where it was, but 80% out the door is better than 100% in the drawer, and that's something that has stuck with me over these years. So certainly can appreciate that. Doesn't look like there's any additional questions that have come in, so we will go ahead and cap it there. Thank you so much, James, for putting this presentation together. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us here. There is a brief survey that will be in your inbox here at 1 p.m. Would really appreciate if you folks could take just a couple moments and reply to that. It really helps kind of steer and determine the content that we put out at DreamBank. Lots of wonderful praise coming in for folks here too, James. So with that being said, we will go ahead and cap it there, and we will see you all next time. Take
Great.
care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.